Timbers are lined beneath a vanished shore, swallowed by rising tides. A skull with no body still cradling its ancient brain. Chambers cut beneath a city older than history. Empty, silent, endless. And in the desert, a mosaic blooms in color, surrounded by dust and nothing else. These aren't tales, they're real, and no one can fully explain them. Scattered across mountains, jungles, and buried ruins, artifacts emerge like fragments of a lost language, one we no longer speak. Symbols carved into stone, rulers erased from memory, tunnels that lead nowhere, or somewhere we no longer dare to go. They weren't accidents. They meant something, but their meaning remains just out of reach. This isn't a list of ancient objects. It's a journey through silence, where each discovery doesn't give us answers, only deeper questions. And maybe, buried beneath it all, something still waits for us to remember. Beneath the shifting sands and crashing waves of Cardigan Bay, something ancient sleeps, not in stone but timber. Massive, blackened stumps of oak and pine pierce through the tidal flats near Borth, Wales, rising like skeletal fingers from a forgotten world. For centuries, these half-buried remains stirred local tales of a lost kingdom, a forest drowned by time and tide. But what lies beneath the legend is no myth. In recent decades, storm surges and coastal erosion have peeled back layers of peat and sand to reveal the outline of a prehistoric landscape, a drowned forest preserved in astonishing detail. Among the trunks, archaeologists have found the prints of human feet, frozen mid-step in hardened peat. There are children's footprints, deer tracks, and traces of fires long extinguished. A timber walkway, over 3,000 years old, was discovered running across the bog, built with twisted branches laid side by side. A fragile bridge across the marsh, or perhaps something more ceremonial. Who walked here last, and why did they never return? What preserved all of this wasn't chance. The forest once stood on solid ground during the early Holocene, when sea levels were lower. But as global temperatures rose, so did the tides. Encroaching salt water transformed the freshwater woodland into marsh, then bog, then seabed. As it did, it laid down thick deposits of peat, dense, airless, acidic layers that sealed everything beneath them. In this oxygen-starved world, bacteria couldn't thrive. Wood petrified, ashes endured. Footprints, pressed in soft earth thousands of years ago, hardened into fossils of daily life. Why were they gathering here? And what rituals did they perform before the sea reclaimed their ground? Then came the posts. In 2022, researchers uncovered upright timber posts beneath the tidal flats of Wales, remnants of a prehistoric forest and ceremonial landscape. Their placement wasn't random. Some aligned with the rising sun, others with lunar cycles, an echo of what we see at Stonehenge, but made of wood and almost entirely lost to time. These structures suggest a complex understanding of the heavens and a deep relationship with the landscape, one now buried by rising seas. What were they measuring? Time, tide, or something more divine? What's even more intriguing is that Borth is not alone. Across Britain, similar monuments have been discovered in ancient wetlands, Stonehenge in Norfolk being the most famous. Built around 2049 BCE, Stonehenge was a circle of oak posts surrounding an inverted tree stump, likely used in ritual ceremonies linked to the seasons. Like Borth, it too was buried in peat and preserved for thousands of years. Taken together, these sites form a scattered network of timber monuments, wooden henges, built by communities who understood the natural cycles of light, tide, and time, and tried to mark or perhaps influence them. Some scholars believe these structures were part of climate rituals. During the Bronze Age, sudden shifts in temperature brought colder, wetter conditions. These weren't passive responses to nature, they were spiritual interventions. These wooden circles may have been built to hold back winter, to draw out the warmth, or ensure balance in a world they felt slipping beyond their control. Borth's hidden monument may have served the same purpose, an ancient act of resistance against a world that was changing too fast. Did they succeed even for a while? Or was the sea always destined to win? Today, this prehistoric seascape is revealed only at the mercy of the tide, uncovered, then hidden again. What remains is both fragile and resilient, the outline of a world that once stood above the waves, now resting just beneath them. But if the sea can bury a monument, it can also preserve a story. And beyond these ghostly timbers, something else awaits. Power etched in jungle stone where queens once ruled, and the silence still speaks their names. The jungle hides what stone cannot. Beneath tangled roots and collapsed temples, fragments of royal history lie waiting, not of kings but queens. For decades, the great snake dynasty of the ancient Maya was believed to be a brotherhood of warrior rulers. its emblem, the Khan or serpent, etched across monuments from Mexico to Guatemala. But the glyphs were never silent. We just weren't listening closely enough. From around 500 to 740 CE, the Snake dynasty, based in the powerful city of Calakmul in modern-day southern Mexico, challenged Tikal for dominance over the Maya lowlands. Through conquest, diplomacy, and calculated marriages, it extended its influence across more than 50 city-states. The snake emblem appeared on distant stelae, declaring victories and vassal alliances. For generations, the throne seemed inseparable from male power. But was that ever truly the case? One ruler stands out. Lady Jebal, a royal daughter of Calakmul, was sent to rule El Peruwaka around 672 CE, where she held the rare and powerful title Kalumte, Supreme Warlord, a rank above even her husband's. Her image survives in sculpted stone, a queen clad in ceremonial headdress and jade regalia, standing tall beside a lesser figure. Was this political symbolism or a direct declaration of power? In 2012, archaeologists excavating a temple at Waka discovered a burial chamber that matched her profile. Inside lay the remains of a woman in her 40s, surrounded by shell girdles, obsidian blades, and an alabaster vessel bearing her name. Had she ruled not only in life but in death as well? And if so, why had her memory faded into silence? Lady Jebal wasn't alone. At least 35 Maya queens from Calakmul have now been identified as key players in diplomacy and dynastic politics. These women, sometimes called stranger queens, were dispatched to allied or rival cities like Naranjo, El Mirador, and Coba to forge or strengthen alliances. In some cases, they ruled outright. One, Lady Six Sky, arrived in Naranjo as a teenage bride, but instead of fading into the background, she led military campaigns, re-established dynastic continuity, and ruled until her death in 741 CE. How many others followed the same path? And how many were erased from history before we could learn their names? Why were these queens celebrated on stelae, only to be later chiseled away? Inscriptions across the Maya world show signs of intentional destruction. Glyphs bearing women's names were scratched out, overwritten or buried under newer monuments. Was this an attempt to erase their legacies, or to rewrite the narrative of power as exclusively male? Even today, the full story remains hidden in fragments. Maya writing is layered, time compressed into symbols, meaning encoded in metaphor. Epigraphers continue to decode the surviving texts, but what if the most important names were never recorded at all? Modern archaeology has begun to catch up. LiDAR scans now reveal entire hidden cities beneath the forest canopy. Digital reconstructions allow researchers to piece together shattered stelae and reanalyze half-erased glyphs. New inscriptions are being found every year, and with them new queens whose voices are only now beginning to rise. Were the Snake Queens rulers in their own right, or pawns in a dynastic game? Were their names erased because they failed, or because they succeeded too well? From daughters turned diplomats to generals in jade, these women held thrones once thought reserved for kings. And though their voices were nearly lost, their power was written in stone, and stone remembers. Now we leave behind the jungles and glyphs of the Maya and enter a different silence, high in the mountains of Iran, where stone holds not words but images. Images carved by hands we cannot name, telling stories we no longer understand. High above the desert floor, where the wind scrapes rock into dust and the sun burns without mercy, ancient hands left their mark. On cliffs and boulders of the Jebal Barez mountains, strange images linger, carved into stone so long ago that even the names of their makers have vanished. No kings are mentioned, no gods are named, just silence etched in line and shadow. These petroglyphs, hidden across the highlands of Kerman province, are not isolated. They form part of a vast, often overlooked rock art landscape stretching across southeastern Iran, rivaling more famous sites in Arabia, Anatolia, and Central Asia. The carvings span millennia, from the Chalcolithic period through the Bronze Age, from the Achaemenid and Sassanid empires into Islamic times, a silent dialogue across ages. But who started this conversation, and why did it never end? Some scenes are vivid. Ibex frozen mid-leap, hunters drawing bows, falconers with tethered birds, chariots in motion. One figure appears to ride a goat, a possible echo of early domestication or myth. Others are cryptic, twisting spirals, abstract symbols, distorted human shapes. Some figures tower with unnatural limbs or fused animal features. Were these beings real, imagined, or divine? Were these carvings a language, a warning, or prayers left for mountains to keep? The stone offers no easy answers. Unlike tablets or scrolls, these messages are carved into exposed rock, with no inscriptions, no dating, and no accompanying tools left behind. Scholars rely on patina layers, weathering patterns, and stylistic comparison to estimate their age. Some carvings may be nearly 6,000 years old. Others are younger, carved over older works, like layers of a palimpsest, where each generation responded not just to nature but to what came before. What stories were they adding to, or erasing? While the Temare and Kedu valleys in central Iran have drawn more recent attention, Jebal Barez remains largely undocumented. Only scattered surveys have mapped its carvings. In places, entire walls are covered in overlapping scenes, suggesting not idle decoration but ritual or mnemonic purpose. A 2023 field study revealed that many petroglyph sites across Iran align with seasonal water sources, ancient trails, or elevated lookout points. They may have guided herders, marked tribal territories, or formed sacred spaces. But is geography the only key, or were these sites chosen for reasons we've long forgotten? The harsh environment preserved what would rot elsewhere. No pigment remains, only the pecked grooves and incised outlines, most carved directly into dark volcanic rock, whose surface patterns over time, darkening the stone and contrasting older cuts from newer ones. Some show signs of metal tools, others stone, a clue to the vast time span they represent. Could the style of a single carved spiral outlast entire civilizations? In recent years, Iran has begun to push for UNESCO recognition of its major petroglyph sites, but vast areas like Jebal Barez remain undocumented and unprotected, at the mercy of erosion, vandalism, and time. Thousands of carvings may still lie undiscovered, or worse, misidentified, mistaken for scratches, overlooked completely. How much have we already lost to the silence we never learned to read? These carvings don't belong to a single people, language, or kingdom. They are fragments of a memory passed hand to hand across generations, a prehistoric archive without translation. They speak not with words but with presence, figures still standing in the same wind that once touched their creator's skin. We leave the mountains behind and descend into the earth, to a skull buried in mud, where memory clung to matter long after life was gone. Buried alone in a shallow pit, severed clean at the neck, the skull should have turned to dust centuries ago. But why didn't it? In 2008, during excavations ahead of construction near Heslington in York, archaeologists expected routine Iron Age remains, pottery, animal bones, perhaps a few post holes. Instead, they uncovered a mystery that still defies explanation. A 2,600-year-old human skull, unearthed intact with brain tissue still preserved inside. No skin, no muscle, no organs, just the soft, shrunken folds of a brain, ancient, silent, and inexplicably present. How could something so fragile endure when everything else decayed? The skull was found in wet, low-oxygen clay, which helped slow decomposition, but that alone wasn't enough. Hundreds of burials in similar soil show no trace of brains. Something unique had happened here. Studies revealed an unusual process called protein cross-linking, where the brain's proteins had chemically bonded in a way that stabilized their structure. The tissue was dehydrated, but still structurally coherent, resisting the collapse that time usually brings. Was it nature's accident or something intentional? The skull belonged to a man in his 30s, healthy at the time of death, local to the region based on isotope analysis, but his cervical vertebrae were cleanly severed, with no other trauma, suggesting a precise decapitation. Not battlefield violence, a deliberate act. But why was his body missing? Was he a criminal? A sacrifice? A chosen figure buried for reasons lost to time? There are few parallels in Iron Age Britain. Ritual decapitation is rare but not unheard of. Heads held special significance in Celtic belief systems, thought to house the soul or power of an individual. Some were displayed on poles, others buried under thresholds or near water. But a solo skull buried in isolation is something else entirely. Could this have been a form of reverence or a curse? No tools or grave goods were found nearby. Just the skull in a pit, carefully deposited. Its position wasn't careless. It rested face down, a detail that raises even more questions. Was it meant to be hidden, shamed, or protected? Archaeologists noted that the soil was compacted around it, suggesting it had been quickly and intentionally buried. And what belief could have dictated such care for the brain, yet complete erasure of the man himself? Today, the Heslington brain is considered one of the best preserved ancient human brains ever found, not just in Europe, but globally. Forensic specialists and biochemists continue to study its molecular structure, not just to understand preservation, but to glean insights into Iron Age life, death, and ritual. Yet despite modern tools, much remains unanswered. Why this man? Why this pit? Why did only his mind survive? Even as we peer at it under microscopes, freeze samples, and map its folds in 3D, the truth might lie beyond preservation. It may lie in a belief system whose rituals we no longer understand, whose language has been lost, whose silence is louder than any inscription. We've stared into the head of one man, preserved against all odds. Now we turn to the stone tomb of another, a pyramid meant to last forever, yet buried itself beneath failure, collapse, and mystery. Beneath the wind-swept sands of Dashur, a ruined pyramid leans in slow collapse, its core slumping, its casing vanished, its chambers flooded and broken. And yet, this was once a marvel, a royal tomb that dared to push architecture beyond its limits. What went wrong beneath the stones of Amenemhat III? Construction began around 1850 BCE, early in the reign of Amenemhat III, one of the last great rulers of Egypt's Middle Kingdom. This structure was bold, experimental, and fatally flawed. Unlike the solid stone cores of Old Kingdom pyramids, Amenemhat's design relied on mud brick terraces, layered step by step and encased in 5-meter-thick Tura limestone. These outer blocks, precisely fitted and held in place with wooden dovetail pegs, gleamed white under the desert sun. At its peak stood a granite pyramidion, later found cracked and defaced, its inscriptions to Amun erased during the heretical Amarna period in the 14th century BCE. But what ambition led to collapse? The location was part of the problem. Dashur lies only 10 meters above sea level, and recent studies have traced an ancient Nile branch, the Amenemhat, that once flowed near its base. Though ideal for transport, it proved treacherous. Groundwater seeped into the lower chambers, weakening the mud brick and turning its corridors into soft, unstable clay. Engineers attempted to correct it, reinforcing shafts, modifying slopes, but the pyramid was already sagging under its own weight. Why did they risk so much on ground that couldn't hold it? Inside, the layout was more elaborate than any pyramid before. A descending passage split in two. One route led to Amenemhat's own burial chamber, the other to those of his queens. 10 subsidiary shaft tombs were carved around the base, a rare design. This was the first Egyptian pyramid meant to inter both king and queens, unified within a single funerary complex. But the same innovation that set it apart also destabilized it. The roof of the king's chamber lacked stress-relieving vaults, and with no proper load redistribution, cracks spread like veins through the ceiling stone. Even before construction finished, the Black Pyramid had begun to fail. Did Amenemhat know his resting place was sinking, or did he abandon it in time? What we do know is that another pyramid, at Hawara, built in the late 1840s BCE, rose in the years that followed. This one, sturdier, more compact, was likely meant as the pharaoh's final tomb. Inside Hawara was a labyrinthine mortuary complex, described by ancient writers and feared by grave robbers. In effect, Amenemhat III had two pyramids, one grand and broken, the other secretive and complete. Why did the most powerful king of the Middle Kingdom build two tombs? Modern surveys of the Black Pyramid have revealed more than just failure. Ground-penetrating radar has uncovered undocumented structures, water channels, and traces of a causeway that once connected the pyramid to the Nile. In 2024, archaeologists discovered a nearby Old Kingdom mastaba, possibly belonging to an official named Negev, suggesting that Dashur's pyramid field wasn't just royal, it was part of a longer funerary tradition stretching centuries back. Could the failure of this pyramid have redirected the course of Egyptian royal architecture? The once shining casing stones are gone, stripped in later centuries. Today, only the crumbling core remains, leaning, half swallowed by the desert. The internal chambers are too unstable to safely enter. What lies within may never be known. Was something still sealed beneath all that mud brick? Or did they empty it before the sands took over? This pyramid was not just a ruin. It was a prototype, a warning, a moment where vision outpaced the land itself. And now, as we leave the fractured tomb of a pharaoh, we descend again, this time into the oldest city on earth where carved chambers snake underground, their purpose still lost in shadow. They dug expecting walls. What they found were voids. Beneath the mound of Tel es-Sultan, cradle of ancient Jericho, a city whose habitation stretches back to circa 10,000 BCE, archaeologists uncovered more than relics. They uncovered intent, carved deep into the earth. In the early 2010s, A team investigating Bronze Age levels stumbled upon a subterranean structure, a vast quarry carved directly into the limestone bedrock, more than 10 meters below the surface. There were chambers, benches, steps, niches, and carved water channel, but no inscriptions, no artifacts, no offerings. Not a single object revealed its purpose. Why shape such space only to abandon it? Preliminary assessments placed the quarry's origin in the early Bronze Age, around 3000–2500 BCE, based on stratigraphy and tool marks consistent with ancient quarrying. Some chambers appear unfinished, abruptly ending mid-carve, while others bear precise symmetry, with staircases leading to nowhere and walls marked by careful, deliberate cuts. This wasn't casual digging, it was a design, one we still don't understand. Was it truly for quarrying, or something closer to ceremony? Geological studies reveal that this site follows a natural fracture zone, possibly tracking ancient spring-fed fissures running beneath the city. Builders may have intentionally followed the flow of water, carving with a purpose aligned not only with practical needs, but perhaps with symbolic or spiritual meaning. In ancient cultures, water hidden beneath stone was often seen as a bridge between worlds, life above and something older below. Could these chambers mark more than just extraction? Stratigraphic surveys of Jericho show overlapping urban and ritual layers, towers, walls, granaries, and elite compounds. This underground system lies beneath them all, untouched by later reuse. Some scholars suggest that its silence, its emptiness, is part of its message. Unlike tombs or shrines, there are no gods, no names, no death, just space. What society invests so much effort into absence? Just beyond Jericho in 2009, a massive man-made cave was discovered about 5 kilometers to the north. That structure, likely first used as a quarry, eventually housed over 350 stone pillars, Roman crosses, zodiac carvings, and symbols of military legions. This evolution from extraction to sanctuary suggests a cultural rhythm in the Jordan Valley. Dig, abandon, reinterpret, and consecrate. Could Jericho's quarry have started that pattern? Its layout suggests more than functionality. Raised platforms resemble altars. The acoustics in some chambers amplify even whispers. The cool, still air seems designed to hold not just bodies, but ideas. Descent into the carved tunnels may have represented transformation. In many ancient cultures, caves were seen not as hiding places, but as thresholds. Did this descent mark a ritual, a rebirth, a passage into something else? Though no direct inscriptions remain, the quarry lies beneath one of the most complex archaeological sites on Earth. The pre-pottery Neolithic Tower of Jericho, built around 8000 BCE, still looms above, one of the oldest known stone structures in the world. That people built such a tower above and carved such mystery below may not be coincidence. How do you explain a civilization obsessed with both ascent and descent? Modern mapping suggests even more tunnels lie hidden, perhaps collapsed or sealed. The quarry may connect to deeper, older voids, structures now part of a proposed Jericho geopark where geology and archaeology intertwine. Yet as researchers scan and document, the original meaning remains untouched. Who were the voices that once echoed in these walls, and what were they saying? No script answers us, no relic speaks, but the stone holds its memory. Now, stepping from this hollowed silence into sunlight once more, we turn to a revelation uncovered not in bedrock, but in delicate fragments of color, a mosaic that tells a story without words, lost and found in the sands of the western Negev. It wasn't found in a tomb or a temple, but under fields near Kibbutz Urim, where a patch of soil once cracked to reveal color. Beneath the Negev's shifting dust lay a Byzantine mosaic so detailed, so vivid, that scholars called it one of the most exquisite ever uncovered in southern Israel. But what was it doing out here on the edge of the desert? The mosaic was first unearthed in 1990 at the site of Kirbat Be'er Shema, once part of a Byzantine agricultural estate and Christian monastery. Though exposed, it remained largely forgotten for decades, battered by wind, rain, and the passing of time. Only in 2024 was it fully excavated, conserved, and relocated by the Israel Antiquities Authority and the Ministry of Heritage for permanent public display. Why hide such beauty in a place so remote? Dating between the 5th and 7th centuries CE, the floor belonged to a monastery believed to be part of the Negev's wine and pilgrimage network, connecting inland farming centers to ports like Gaza and Ashkelon. Alongside its church and courtyards were storerooms, wine presses, and dormitories for monks and travelers. This was a frontier outpost for both devotion and trade, where faith was fermented in silence. And at its heart lay this mosaic. It spans dozens of medallions, Animals both domestic and exotic, hunters mid-sprint, baskets spilling with fruit, and human figures laboring in vineyards. But unlike many church mosaics of the time, there are no inscriptions, no saints' names, no biblical verses. Not a single word accompanies the imagery. Was this absence deliberate? A silent gospel told only in stone. Crafted in the opus tessellatum style, small tesserae fitted in tight grids, the mosaic reveals both technical mastery and narrative intent. But without inscriptions, the meaning slips from our grasp. Were the animals symbolic? Did the fruit represent paradise? Or was this a more local story known only to the monks who tread over it daily? Why leave no names behind? Surrounding the mosaic, archaeologists found remains of wine amphorae, pressed floors and clay pipes, confirming that the monastery was a center of both spirituality and production. The blending of sacred art with agricultural labor reflects a worldview where work was worship, and beauty could sanctify even the floor beneath one's feet. Still, the mosaic's artistry exceeds its setting. Its mythic creatures and hunting scenes belong more to villas than monasteries. Was it repurposed, reinterpreted, or does it reflect a unique desert theology, one shaped not by cities but by sand? What ideas were embedded in these stones, meant to be walked on but never read? Recent analysis suggests that the site may have been layered atop earlier Nabatean or Roman structures, long buried. Was the mosaic laid to overwrite or to consecrate? No earlier inscriptions survive, but perhaps erasure was the point. And still more curious, the total lack of Christian iconography. No crosses, no halos, just labor, harvest, and lions, as if salvation here was earned, not preached. This was not simply spiritual isolation. It was imperial presence in stone and sand. The Byzantine Empire encouraged monastic expansion into desert margins, securing its southern borders with both prayer and production. The mosaic, then, was not just decoration, it was declaration. Each flaked tessera is a word lost, a name erased, until only beauty remains without context. Its recent relocation to the Merhavim Regional Council Complex is part of a broader mission to preserve the Negev's vanishing past. But the questions remain. This wasn't just ornament, it was intention. A vision left behind in glass and color, now speaking again after centuries of silence. Who stood here last, barefoot on lions and grapes? And how many more forgotten masterpieces wait beneath the soil, too fragile for time, too bold to fade? We've followed traces carved in stone, sealed in tombs and buried beneath jungles. Each artifact offered us a glimpse, but never the full picture. They weren't just relics, they were choices, beliefs, warnings, echoes of human lives long vanished, yet somehow still speaking. And the deeper we dig, the clearer it becomes. The past isn't lost, it's hidden, and it still has things to tell us. How many more wonders lie just beneath our feet, unseen, misunderstood, or deliberately erased? If the past still echoes, let it reach further. Like the moment, share the mystery, subscribe to follow what's still hidden, and leave your mark in the comments. And if you haven't yet, there's more to uncover in our other videos, because some mysteries don't stay buried forever.